On behalf of everyone here at the Friends of Science Society, I would like to thank everyone for attending our annual general meeting update. And thank you for supporting us over the past year, and many of you that have supported us since our inception in 2002. I would also like to thank the small but dedicated group of individuals who make up this organization. This will be my third year as president. I'm looking forward to another year of working with these exceptional people. We have a lot of work to do, and we hope you are up for the challenge. We are in our 22nd year of operation as a nonprofit, primarily volunteer organization. Friends of Science Society has learned to run on a shoestring budget. There is no big oil funding. The board of director positions are entirely voluntary. Money does not drive this board. Our goals are simple. We want to provide a better future for our children and grandchildren. That happens through open dialogue on climate change and a whole host of other subjects related to the net zero obsession. That happens through a thorough review of all the available data. The mainstream narrative is a simplistic, unscientific, all CO2, all the time narrative, which ignores the dynamics of the complex, chaotic climate system. A better future for our children and grandchildren happens through a return to fiscal responsibility. We need to stop wasting billions of taxpayers' dollars on green initiatives that will produce no measurable change in temperatures in the future. Measures that burden taxpayers with debt and enrich green crony capitalists. We need to restore common sense, human rights, and debate, and full cost-benefit analysis for public policies. The next statements I make go beyond the purview of the Friends of Science Society, but the subjects are all still intertwined with the climate change discussion. The opinions I express are my own, but they should be given some thought. The present Green New Deal style of climate change policy has had and will continue to have disastrous effects on our society. Our energy policies will impoverish and even kill millions of people around the world. In Europe, some 50 fertilizer plants have closed, partly due to the conflict in Ukraine, but this and aggressive anti-natural gas policies will decimate fertilizer production. Likewise, consumers suffer from free wind and solar. These are driving energy prices higher. Replacing cheap, abundant, high-density, reliable energy with expensive, low-density, intermittent energy is not a recipe for human flourishing. The food and agricultural policies being pushed will kill millions of people around the world, phasing out normal protein for insect protein, shutting down farms, culling bird and animal populations, restricting fertilizer use is not a recipe for human flourishing. The monetary policies being pushed will kill millions of people around the world. Printing new money for unnecessary so-called green initiatives will only add to the already huge debt and inflation issues we are already leaving for our children and grandchildren. Assuming there was a real climate crisis, we cannot fix the climate if we are bankrupt. Again, not a recipe for human flourishing. Even the medical policies being pushed will kill millions of people around the world. Alarmingly, the World Health Organization is now attaching climate change to global public policies, formalized at COP28. If this seems an odd marriage, it is, because most of the public do not really care about climate change, but everyone cares about their health. So, it is a marketing tactic, and one which has potentially disastrous outcomes. Since 2021, there has been a push for net zero healthcare to try and cut healthcare emissions in half by 2030. One way to do that is by limiting access to treatment, no patients, no emissions. John Kerry's daughter, Vanessa Kerry, is the first ever World Health Organization envoy for climate change and health. Climate lockdowns and other restrictions on freedom are not far behind. Producing and mandating additional untested medical procedures developed over the last few years and will not lead to human flourishing. Sadly, all these issues are conflated with CO2-driven climate change. In my opinion, we will be facing a long, tough year. I expect a major censorship resurgence and societal upheaval as we approach the November 2024 U.S. elections. Combined with our own and other global elections over the next year and a half, our future hangs in the balance. We all need to weigh that future carefully. The catastrophic anthropogenic global warming narrative is built on three basic principles. The narrative, all CO2 all the time, can be represented by a stool with ineffective to non-existent real support. Number one, CO2 is essentially responsible for all the warming since the pre-industrial period. But there are no empirical CO2 temperature data sets that show CO2 driving the climate on any statistically significant historical timescale, a very basic scientific method requirement. Secondly, the studies and experts say that more CO2 emissions will lead to catastrophically high temperatures and Armageddon. But every future projection, every attribution study is based on computer models that have been self-acknowledged to run way too hot and use unrealistically high emission scenarios. And that includes any scenario above RCP 4.5. Thirdly, rising CO2 levels are leading to more and more devastating extreme weather events. But the empirical data, and even the IPCC, says otherwise. Extreme weather events have generally remained statistically flat or have been declining on timeframes that are relevant to climate. There is no scientific justification for the alarmist narrative. There is no economic justification for the climate policy prescriptions put out by the alarmist community. And there is not even an environmental justification for the alarmists' all CO2, all the time narrative. These 3 points show how simplistic and unscientific our current climate policies have become. Those policies will cost us, Canadians, trillions of taxpayer dollars that we do not have. Those trillions will be wasted since no measurable impact on climate will be detectable. The figures shown here and many more, along with some discussion from last year's AGM, can be found in my CSS-53 CO2's Moneyball Moment post. It's on my website, climatechangeandmusic.com. In keeping with the famous Moneyball quote, if he's such a good hitter, why doesn't he hit good? We can ask the same question, if CO2 is such a good climate driver, why doesn't it drive climate good? I like to call it the climate change ideology that permeates our political and media class. Unfortunately, the ideology is still strong and will be a problem for many years to come. Sadly, far too many members of the general public have trouble thinking for themselves, or they lack the courage to speak up. But now the cost and impact of climate policies are hitting home. There's a strong pushback from many sectors of the public against net zero ideology. Thankfully, parts of society are gradually waking up to the realities of energy, food, and monetary security. I hope that awakening continues and accelerates quickly. These unscientific, uneconomic, unneeded, and frankly dangerous, insidious green policies will continue through our upcoming elections. The green agendas being pushed out by our governments and their UNWEF advisors are an attack on our way of life and freedom, morphing our society into a global totalitarian regime. I do not want that for my or your children and grandchildren. Some may think I am exaggerating, but the Deutsche Bank issued a report advocating for an eco-dictatorship to build back better. One wherein your rights and property would take a backseat to their vision of a greener world. Why a bank wanting an eco-dictatorship? Nothing says it better than this quote from Jeff Skilling, president of Enron, the greatest fraud of all time and the root of many current climate initiatives. This is what he said to a colleague. Mike, we are a green energy company, but the green stands for money. So despite the challenges we face, we are extremely grateful to you for your financial support, for your advocacy on our behalf within your circles of influence, for sharing our materials on social media and by email, and for your courage and commitment to a better world, one that is free from climate hysteria and is flourishing thanks to the proper application of the scientific method. Your ongoing support is needed. The future of our civilization is on the line. Thank you very much.